If you're 25 years old and you got 0.25 of Bitcoin, you could retire on.
I like it.
The one thing to make this this interview different that I'd like probably to go into is that retiring on Bitcoin standard, I don't think traditional finance's Bitcoin lending is quite there yet. So what I've done, because rule number one, we never sell our Bitcoin, but you have to, where are you going to continue to get money on if you're actually retired? Okay. If you want a really good lifestyle. So I've been going on MicroStrategy and I sell anywhere from 6 to 17 transactions a week selling options on MicroStrategy. And I can make anywhere from 1% to 2.5% or 3% on the options premium. And then I take that money and I use that to live on. Because I mean, right now, I easily, even if the stock goes down, I can probably make minimum $5,000 a week on a $500,000 investment. So I make more money if the price goes up, but even if it's going down to a certain extent, at the end of the week, I'll still have the shares I have, and I will have taken 5,000 in value. So that's what I'm actually using for lifestyle, and I don't touch the Bitcoin. It's really a hell of a hack if you and it's playing the Bitcoin. I'm playing the Bitcoin. Hopefully, MicroStrategy goes up. But that's what I think we ought to talk about, because this retire on Bitcoin standard and never sell your Bitcoin, do you really want to pay 12%? That's awful high. Now, of course, you've talked to somebody probably clued you in on going to like AAVA, or whatever it is, which you can do it cheaper. I've never done it, and it's totally decentralized. But we can talk about that. But I think that's a direction you might want to go in, because everybody just says hold your Bitcoin. But as somebody who's actually retired on it, it's one thing if you got a job or if you've got a business, you've got other income coming in, okay? But if all you got is you're a maxi and you got everything in Bitcoin, and I do, everything I've got is in Bitcoin, one way or the other.
Before we get started with the topic, give us some overview for the people that are watching and listening of who you are and why in the first place you are even excited about Bitcoin.
All right. Well, my name's Mark Hanna. I've been on your channel once before. It was a fun time. I have been retired since I was 49, actually. But when I retired, when I was 49, they didn't have Bitcoin. That was in 2004. Now I'm 70. So I'm here living in Thailand, in a rural part of Thailand, about 8 miles from Jamtien and Pattaya Beach in Thailand. And how I found Bitcoin was because on January 21st of 2021, I said, that's it. I'm done with the United States. Joe Biden doesn't do it for me. And I don't like the way the country's going. So I'm not going to complain. I'm just going to leave. So at that point, I spent the next 18 months trying to get out of the United States, sell everything I own. And at that point, I had no Bitcoin, none. And this was January 21st of 2021. Now, I knew about Bitcoin. And I knew about it like everybody else did by watching, CNBC every day. And I was trading stocks and doing things like that. But I had no Bitcoin. And I said, if I'm leaving the country, how am I going to store my money? I don't trust, at that point, I didn't trust the United States. I didn't trust the way the government was going. And I didn't trust them not to take your money. And with fractional reserve banking being what it is, if everybody wants to go get their money out of the banks, the country's screwed. They've got like 2 cents on the dollar if they've got that much to pay out of what they owe. And as you know from our previous interview, debt is the number one disease of the world. So anyway, I didn't know how to get in Bitcoin. So right after that, I said, I can get some Bitcoin exposure by buying this company, MicroStrategy. So I bought MicroStrategy in 2021, just about 6 months after it started buying Bitcoin for its Bitcoin treasury. And I'm sure a lot of your followers know about MicroStrategy. So I was there when it went from low, when it went up to $1,200 and it did the 10-for-1 reverse or 10-for-1 stock split. I was there, and I loved MicroStrategy, and that got me into the first part of Bitcoin. And I needed Bitcoin to protect my wealth, and I needed to buy another citizenship by investment, because I didn't trust the country. And I know a lot of people in Europe right now are living in countries they don't trust what the European Union and is trying to do to their Bitcoin. And basically, I know that I hold my keys. It's my coin. And that's how I got into Bitcoin. What I did after that was I opened up a account with a couple of brokers. I had an account with Gemini. I should know I'm a Gemini. I was born June. I should know that. It's not Gemini. Gemini is a cricket that sits on a little shoulder in a Walt Disney movie. Gemini cricket. So anyway, I got with Swan Bitcoin, and I went back to work when I was 60. Well, I shouldn't say go back to work. I didn't work before I retired. I owned my own companies. But I decided at 60, I was bored. So I said, maybe somebody will just hire me as a IT guy, because that's what I did since 1979 was everything computers, everything networking, everything programming, everything. I was on the bleeding edge of technology for many, many years. So I got hired and got paid real well. So I said, I'm just going to put a substantial amount of money every single day into Bitcoin. And I wasn't a maxi. I didn't go from orange pill, I need Bitcoin, to maxi. It was a slow grind to get out of the United States. So that's how I got there. I mean, it's not an extraordinary story. It was, I didn't trust the country I was living in to protect what I worked for 40 years. Or at that time, it was I guess, 35 years or something. Because we're talking 4 years ago, so I would have been 66. And I just didn't trust the country I lived in. That's not to say there's anything wrong with the United States. I think it's come a long way to changing things, and I love the country. But I wouldn't go back and live there unless I absolutely 100% had no choice. Living in Thailand is so much better than living in the United States. But that got me out the door. That's what really got me out the door, Robin, is just Swan every day buying Bitcoin. And timing wasn't real good, because I was buying Bitcoin when I first got in. I got in around, I guess my first buy was like 59,000 in 2021. And I watched it just every day seemingly come down a little bit more. But I bought every day, every single day, because at Swan, you could program it to buy every day. But I was still putting money away in a 401k that they were paying me. And I thought, well, that's going to be a little nest egg here. And since I was already retired, I was living on the money I had in stocks and investments and real estate. And, when I retired at 49, I was living on the money I had. And that's not really a very smart way to do it. It really isn't, because number one rule of Bitcoin is you don't sell your Bitcoin. And number one rule of your wealth when you retire is protect your wealth and find some way to live off of it. So for the guy who owns real estate and some apartment buildings, live off the rent, but don't sell your apartment building if that's how you're going to try to retire. Now, right now, I've got Bitcoin, and I don't want to sell my Bitcoin. I have never sold a single Satoshi, ever. Not one. That's why I put the HODL hat on. Plus, there's a big bright light over here in the recording studio. I should say recording studio / stock trading studio. So I had MicroStrategy all the time, but I started getting rid of all the other stocks. Even if they were good ones, Apple, Microsoft, get rid of them, swing it towards Bitcoin. Sell property, swing it towards Bitcoin. And I didn't trust the banks. But how are you going to live on that if you're never going to sell a Satoshi? Now, I have in the United States, they call it Social Security, and I've got pretty good Social Security payment. I've only met one guy in my life that actually was getting more than me. But it was based on how much money you made and paid to them is how much you get back. So I was doing all right, but I can't live the lifestyle I got here. I'm not living in a condo like I ran away from America and jumped into a 35 square meter condo. This is a 3,000 square foot single story pool villa. Right outside my door is my private 45-foot long pool that's 20 foot wide, I guess, 15 wide by 45 long, I guess. Beautiful. And it's not cheap. And with the way they're debasing the American currency right now, just in the last 6 months alone, my rent went up like $200 or $300 a month. I think last month it went up about $60 because I have to take the money that I'm getting from MicroStrategy through my options efforts, and I have to bring it to Thailand to pay the rent. And the US dollar is being debased. They're spending money. I'd say they're spending money like drunken sailors, but drunken sailors ain't that fucking stupid. They don't spend that kind of money. So they keep debasing the US dollar to a point where, it's $300 more a month than it was in November when I switched to this condo, this pool villa, which is bigger than the last pool villa. So you need the money to learn and earn. And what I did was I had the MicroStrategy, and lucky for me, in the United States, they have something called a Roth IRA. And if you have a regular IRA or a regular 401k or one of those other IRA type vehicles, you can roll it into a Roth IRA. There's some tax penalties for doing that. You have to pay some taxes and stuff. But it's good because once you get in there, every trade you make or every withdrawal you take is tax-free 100%. So let's say I've got 2,500 shares of MicroStrategy stock, now called Strategy, of course. Well, you can sell options on a weekly basis at various strike prices against that MicroStrategy stock, and you can make anywhere from 1 to 3 or 4%, depends on how big the volatility is and how good you are at guessing which way it's going to go. And if you do everything right, you're going to get higher percent. And if the volatility is real high, you're going to get a higher percent. But basically, if you can get to where you control 2,500 shares of strategy stock, you can, I think the best I've done on juice like that's like 25,000 in a week. And the worst is like 4,000. And that's even if the stock goes nowhere. If the stock opened for 300, like it did yesterday, closed at $377.02. If it opened at 377.02 on Monday and it closes at 377.02 on Friday, I'm still going to make $5,000. Now, if it goes to from 377 to 400, I'm going to make a lot more. But if it goes nowhere, I'm going to get the $5,000 cash I'm going to get. Now, the value of the stock might go down. Maybe it goes from 377 to 350. I'm losing money. There ain't no two ways about it. But I'm able to extract cash by selling options without selling stock. So at the end of the week, I'll still have the 2,500 shares of strategy stock. I can withdraw that cash, but I still have the stock. I didn't sell any of the stock. So the next week, if it goes back up, I'm in no worse position than I was the previous week, and I'm making income off of that. So everybody says, retire on your Bitcoin. Now you can, all the podcast shows are talking about you can get a loan on your Bitcoin with Ledin or one of the other companies out there. It seems like Ledin's spending the most advertising dollars with influencers. But if you look at it, you're paying 12% because it's just not that popular yet. Now, when the big boys get in and you start being able to get loans from Cantor Fitzgerald and from JP Morgan and from Wells Fargo and from Citibank, like all things, as Jeff Booth so adequately espouses, it's deflationary in nature. They're going to put these lending departments up and they want to lend money. They have it. They ought to have it. They print it for free. The banks are getting money from the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve loaned it to the big banks. The big banks make loans with it. And the big banks are getting it cheap, and then they make loans with it to other people. They're just getting it given to them. This whole thing, the world's on debt. They're on debt overload. Debt is the opiate that has destroyed the entire world. As I said before, people are on debt. Families are on debt. Cities are in debt. The county that you live in is in debt. Tell me what place in your country isn't in debt. Almost everybody's in debt. And who actually is the lender? That's the strange thing. I did a little studying on that. And who owns all the debt? There's $400 trillion worth of debt in the world today. Well, who's the lender? The United States sells bonds, and they sell bonds to Denmark or wherever, and then that country sells bonds to other people, and then other people go out and borrow money. It snowballs and snowballs and snowballs. Everybody's in debt. So when people say hold on to your Bitcoin and retire, let me put it this way: if you're lucky enough that you have 1,000 Bitcoin, go ahead, spend it. I mean, you won't outlive at 70 years old. I'm not going to outlive 1,000 Bitcoin. Why bother worrying about it? Just go ahead and spend it. You might not be able to spend it quick enough. if you're not crazy. You know, if you're not trying to buy Michael Saylor's yacht, you probably won't be able to outrun it. But if you've only got a reasonable amount of Bitcoin, you know, we talked last time, 0.25. I said, if you're 25 years old and you got 0.25 of Bitcoin, you could retire on. Because you got 40 years of compounding appreciation. And if you don't touch it, when it comes to retirement age, you're going to have a lot of money on a quarter of a Bitcoin.
Thank you for watching this video. This was only a snippet of the podcast. And if you want to watch the full episode and get all of the context of this episode, you can click right here or here. Oh, maybe also here.